Be ready because football season is back, which means we are about to feel huge.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Katie, and for those of you who don't know me, I used to weigh 360 pounds, and I've lost 180 pounds and kept it off for years now. And on this channel, we will discuss weight loss, weight maintenance, nonsense I see online about body positivity and fat acceptance, my experiences with all of that, and, well, anything else I feel like talking about. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and let's get into today's video. So today I have a TikTok from another new friend to the channel, and she's got some opinions on the size of football players. And well, since it's almost football season, I figured we can go ahead and watch this together, and I'll give you my reaction along the way.
If you're over 200 pounds and you're a girl, be ready because football season is back, which means we are about to feel huge. Only the select few will understand this, but when football's on and people are talking about how huge these guys are, and then you see their stats and they're like 6'2", 240 pounds, whatever they are, and then...
Okay, but yeah, 6'2", 240 pounds, especially for a football player, so that's going to be like 240 pounds of solid muscle? Yeah, that's a very large person. That is a very large individual. And yeah, it just is kind of clear to me that I don't think this creator has ever seen football players in real life. I'm sure she's probably watched them on TV, but as far as actually in real life, that's where you get perspective. So clearly, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and ever since they returned in '99, we've made it a yearly tradition to go to Browns training camp. And typically I like to go within the first week or so whenever they start up training camp. And one thing that's really cool about that is you get to watch them do a lot of drills as opposed to scrimmaging. And at least personally, that was more fun to watch. But then the other cool thing is most of the guys are practicing without pads. So I definitely have met a number of NFL players without their pads. And yeah, these are some of the largest individuals I have ever seen in my entire life. So one of the players that my dad, my brothers, and I all got to meet in the early 2000s was Orlando Brown Sr. He was 6'7" and 360 pounds when he was playing. That is still one of the largest individuals I have ever seen in my entire life. And despite him being 360 pounds, a good portion of that was muscle. He was enormous, absolutely enormous. I could very easily see why his nickname was Zeus, because he was a behemoth, an absolute behemoth of a man. If you saw him just walking down the street towards you, that would be the first thing you would notice is, whoa, that's a very large individual. So I get it. Okay, 360 pounds. That is much larger than the 240 that she was talking about. That's an extra 120 pounds. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some current NFL players. And well, because this is my channel, of course, we're going to be looking at Cleveland Browns. So let's go ahead and start off with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is a running back for the Cleveland Browns and one of the top running backs in the league. He is coming back from a knee injury last season. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these videos of him training. Here's this man squatting well over 500 pounds. And this was just a couple of months ago, so that means that was after multiple knee surgeries last season. And he's still out here squatting all that. And yes, Nick Chubb is absolutely huge. He is a beast of a man. He is 227 pounds of solid muscle. This is him at 16. That's him at 16. I mean, he looks like a grown-ass man. Not a 16-year-old high school kid. So yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if we were to walk up on this man on the streets, outside of the context of football, we would definitely think that he's a large man. Okay, so I'll admit that Chubb's stats are a little bit less than what she'd listed. So let's go ahead and move on to Chief David Njoku, a tight end for the Browns. His stats are 6'4" and 247 pounds. And yes, absolutely a very large man. An incredibly large man. Incredibly fast for how large he is too. But no one is going to look at him outside of the context of football and think, wow, that's a very small person. No, of course no one would think that. I mean, look at him. I mean, he's enormous. And again, if you take away the context of football and you just were walking down the street and you happen to come across Njoku, I don't think anyone out there alive would think that he is a small man, nor would they classify him as an average man. So it pretty much leaves that he's a large man, and clearly he is. So let's go ahead and take a look at another example with someone who's just a little bit larger than that. The 2023 Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. Now, Myles Garrett, he is 6'4" and 272 pounds. Also, again, solid muscle. Now, you want to know how everyone knows that this man is an enormous man? Every single time that he posts a picture on his Instagram where he is not wearing a shirt or he's wearing a sleeveless shirt, he literally gets a DT from the NFL the next day. They cannot believe that he is as large as he is, and they believe that he's using PEDs. So He is an incredibly large and imposing figure on the football field. Let me just tell you, I would not want to be tackled by Myles Garrett. Not even the least little bit, because he is so huge. To be fair, I wouldn't want to get in a tussle with any of these NFL stars because they are large guys. They're also incredibly strong, incredibly fast, incredibly agile. So there is a very large amount of athleticism that makes up an NFL player, in addition to the size. And quite frankly, size is something that stops players all the time from moving up to the next level. That you have to be large enough to play at the high school level or the college level, or especially at the NFL level. There have been so many college players that dominated at that level, and then when they get to the NFL, they just simply cannot compete because they cannot put on another 20 or 30 pounds of muscle to compete with the size of men that they have to go against. So yeah, I think it's a fair thing to say that these athletes are very, very large men.
And your friends around you or your family, they're all like, dang, that guy's huge. Like, oh, he's a beast. Like, look at how big he is.
And again, I don't believe she's actually seen any of these men in real life. I truly don't think she has, because anyone I've ever known who has seen an NFL player in real life, that's the very first thing that they say is, wow, they are bigger in real life than they ever looked on TV. And that can be for a couple of reasons. The first is perspective. When they're on TV and they're surrounded by other football players, they all just kind of look around the same size unless somebody is incredibly large, like Orlando Brown Sr. So without having someone who is not a football player standing next to him, you kind of lose a bit of that perspective. I noticed the same things when I was watching the Olympics a few weeks ago, when we were watching the gymnasts. I was very surprised that on TV, when we were watching it, they all looked to be around the same height and the same size, which meant that none of them looked out of place. But I know just from looking up her stats that Simone Biles is legitimately the same exact height as my 8-year-old daughter. And that gave me perspective. So once I had that perspective, once I did see Simone Biles on TV again, it was a lot easier for me to understand and recognize just how short she actually is, because now I have some perspective. And the same thing will happen in reverse. I've seen the same thing happen repeatedly with NBA players. You can lose perspective of how tall they are when they're all standing next to each other. But again, you put Shaq next to a normal height individual, and then you can very clearly see that perspective. But if he's surrounded by other 7-foot tall players, it's hard to gain that perspective. So this is where I don't actually believe she's seen a high-level football player in real life. Someone who's played maybe college or NFL. Because, yeah, they are enormous. I know that I've mentioned numerous times on here that I worked for a number of years at Men's Wearhouse. And the Men's Wearhouse that I worked at was actually the closest one to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And every year we would have Hall of Fame week. So that means the new inductees are coming into town for the enshrinement, and current Hall of Fame members will come back and help welcome them into the Hall of Fame. And I had to meet a number of them when they came in. I actually had an opportunity to meet Donovan McNabb, and he was incredibly sweet and kind and just very gracious to everyone who was working that day, so that was always lovely to see. But on top of that, his airline had lost his luggage when he was flying in for Hall of Fame week, so he stopped in a Men's Warehouse so he could get clothes to wear for all of the Hall of Fame activities that he had to go to. And despite the fact I wasn't actually the person who was directly helping him, we all noticed he was incredibly hard to fit into clothes. And we had a large selection of big and tall clothes. We had tailors on site so things could get adjusted to you. But athletic builds, specifically football players and bodybuilders, are incredibly difficult to fit into men's clothing just because of how large they are. The size of their arms and their chests and their legs makes it incredibly difficult to get a good fit on clothing because they are that large. And again, I don't believe she's actually seen any of these players in person, in real life, because I think if so, she would have a much different perspective.
And you're sitting here like, 230? You think that's huge? And then you remember that like, oh yeah, you literally are like the size of a football player. You're like, so you think I'm huge? So you think I'm huge?
I mean, if you're a female and you weigh over 200 pounds, depending on your height, yeah, that's probably not going to be a good thing. The average height for females is what, like 5'3.5", 5'4", something like that? And I'm 5'9", and I know what 200 pounds, 230 pounds, and beyond looked like, felt like on me. And yeah, it was quite large. Now, I will definitely admit that when I was gaining weight around 200 or 230 pounds, it was a very slow and gradual weight gain. So it didn't necessarily feel that huge because it was just incrementally larger than I was the day before. And that just added up until next thing you knew, I was 360 pounds. So I can't say I noticed it on the way up, but the perspective that I always got was when I would hold up my clothing. Whenever I would hold up my clothes to fold it when I was at those sizes or above, I definitely remember thinking to myself, wow, this looks huge. There's no way that that's going to fit me. It must be enormous on me now. And then without fail, you'd put it on and that was your size. So that was one way I could get a little bit of perspective. But I got to say, at least while I was gaining weight, the denial was a much bigger force than the perspective ever was. But as I lost weight, that's when I definitely noticed it. Going back down the other side, because I definitely recall at 360 pounds thinking to myself that even if I just lost 100 pounds, there's no way I'm supposed to be 180 or 160 pounds. There's no way that that would look good on me, that was just way too thin, because my perspective was so off for so long of being in a larger body. So as I started losing weight and I got down below 300, then I got below 250, and then I got below 200, I definitely realized, oh yeah, I definitely still have weight to lose on my body. Absolutely. So going up, I lost the perspective, but coming back down, I regained it. So going up in weight, I lost the perspective, but coming back down, I definitely found it again. And I gotta say, it kind of feels indicative to where we're heading as a society and our perspective with weight. That as we are slowly getting larger as a society, we're losing that perspective of what 230 pounds actually is on a man. Because I definitely know in the 80s and 90s, if you would have told someone you weighed 230 pounds, that probably would have gotten you some comments. Case in point, Homer Simpson. He's supposed to be 6 foot and 239 pounds. And when he was created in the late 80s, that it's very clear that his character is supposed to kind of be a lazy slob who likes to eat a lot. Hence the reason he has the figure he does. But here we are in 2024, and evidently Nick Chubb is not that large of a guy.
I mean, they're making millions of dollars. We're making nothing. Like, it doesn't really make sense, but it's okay.
Okay, so does she think that it's only size that makes a football player? I mean, I've already listed off a bunch of attributes. You have to have speed, agility, tremendous athleticism. You have to have the ability and the desire to go through numerous tackles every single week. And those tackles aren't just, oh, let me tackle you to the ground. They are the equivalent of the force of a car crash. And you're going through multiple impacts like that every single game, just so you can get one day off, go back to practice, and then do it all again a week later. So you essentially have to have a superhuman ability to heal in between games. So no, it's not just size. I mean, if we're going to talk about size and the correlation of getting into a professional league, I mean, the best opportunity is if you're over 7 feet tall. There's a 1 in 6 chance that you'll play for the NBA if you're over 7 feet tall. And that's the best odds. That means there's still a 5 in 6 chance that if you're over 7 foot tall, that you will make it to the NBA. Because it's almost like talent and other things are required beyond just size. I mean, I'm 5'9" and 180 pounds. I am the same exact height and weight as one of my absolute favorite baseball players, Jose Ramirez. But am I Jose Ramirez? Hell no. I will never be Jose Ramirez. Even if I had trained my entire life in baseball or softball, I would never be Jose Ramirez because that man has the God-given talent that I could never even dream of. So no, size does not make somebody a professional athlete. But here's the thing. If size is the only requirement to becoming a football player, and I mean, they're making millions and she's just sitting on the couch, why doesn't she go try out? Why doesn't she go try out to be a football player? She could go make millions, right? I mean, she's got one thing in common with them. They're huge. And I mean, she's the same size. So clearly there's nothing else that goes into a professional athlete whatsoever. Just size. There's a reason that they are professional athletes. Because they are the best of the best of the best. I mean, if it were that simple, we could all just go be professional athletes, right?
Okay, and it's also okay. If you weigh over 200 pounds, you weigh over 200 pounds. I swear women versus men weight is just different. It just is different.
Okay, so there is a little bit of truth to that women will have a higher body fat percentage than men on average. Even when you're bodybuilding and going through a cut, men can typically go a little bit leaner than women. And that has a lot to do with hormones, reproduction, the whole 9 yards. So yes, I will hand it to her. There is a kernel of truth in that.
Like, you don't got the titties, you don't. It's just as simple as that.
Okay, but if men get large enough, they absolutely will get tickle bitties. Your body's going to find any place it can to store the extra body fat, whether that's your fingers, your toes, your forehead, your chest. Yeah, your body's going to put it anywhere that it can. And especially since we know that fat isn't just something benign on your body, it's hormonally active. The higher percentage of body fat that you have, the more estrogen is likely in your system. And yes, men can very much get man boobs.
You don't got them. And if both of them weigh 50 pounds, we're already differencing like 100 pounds just in our chest.
100 pounds? She thinks that's how much they weigh. I mean, I won't lie. Some days it does feel like they do weigh that much. But in reality, if somebody's walking around with 100 pounds strapped to their chest, do you really think they're going to be walking? First off, do you think they're even going to be standing? Okay, so at my heaviest, at 360 pounds, my bra size was a 44 to 46H. They were quite large when I was at my heaviest. And yes, I was curious, and yes, I weighed them. They were 15 pounds apiece. That was a total of 30 pounds. They weren't 50 pounds apiece, they were 15. So no, I don't believe people are walking around with 100 pounds of boobs, and if so, they're probably on their way to go get a reduction.
Anyways, girls, see you on the field?
Well, there you have it. Exactly what I said. If you're the same size, clearly you can be an NFL player. When in reality, I know that there is so much more that goes into it. I have seen these men in real life and can confirm they are indeed quite large. And then the other thing that I want to point out that it is not lost on me, the number of football players specifically, but athletes in general, the number of them who do maintain a very high body weight while they are actively competing, while they're actively performing on the field. And then once they retire from that sport, they drop a tremendous amount of weight. A lot of them do. And those that don't, unfortunately, do not have the greatest life expectancy. Unfortunately, Orlando Brown Sr., he passed away at the age of 40 due to complications from diabetes. And then thinking of an example of an athlete who did lose a tremendous amount of weight after they quit the game, Cleveland's offensive lineman, Joe Thomas. In his playing days, he listed himself around 300 pounds, and he's lost a tremendous amount of weight since he has left the NFL. And he talks openly about how he did that for his health, that reaching that size to play the game was a double-edged sword because it caused him a lot of health issues too. So that is something I definitely had to mention, because even though he kept a much higher playing weight while he was on the field, he understood that that was going to be detrimental to his health in the long run. He said, quote, "I was constantly on all sorts of anti-inflammatories and medicines to deal with the pain. Trying to keep that weight on meant eating a lot of crap. I'm not really naturally a huge guy, so to be 300 pounds, I was eating 7,000 calories a day." So he fully admits that being 300 pounds, despite his athleticism, despite his strength and conditioning, was taking a massive physical toll on his body. Just being that size was taking a massive physical toll on his body. So even though it seems she has kind of lost perspective on the size of football players, I hope that gives us all a little bit more perspective. But maybe that's just me. Let me know down in the comments below. What do you think? I'm genuinely curious, and I love reading all of your responses. That is where we'll leave things today. I thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye! Today's video is brought to you by Aloe. It should have been brought to you by sunscreen, but it didn't do the job today, so... Ow! Ow, ow, ow! Leave it to this cat. It's been like 95 degrees out, and where do I find her? In the window in the sun. What is the matter with you? You silly thing. Yes, oh, you sweetheart. Bye!